Good Wednesday morning. Now we're back to the days of the week, okay? The regular days of the week. I just want to look at the gospel, okay? Because I think it really fits what I said yesterday about Joachim and Anne, okay? I'm having trouble here with my book. Here we go, with the gospel. It's Matthew. It's okay, St. Matthew. And he says, Jesus said to his disciples, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field, which a person finds and hides again, and out of joy goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant searching for fine pearls. When he finds a pearl of great price, he goes and sells all that he has and he buys it." The faith is, the faith is, in fact, the treasure in the field that it is. The faith is the pearl of great price. It's Christ. The kicker is you have to know it's there. In each case, the merchant sees it and he appreciates it. And the same with the farmer, or the farmer, or whoever the person is that sees the treasure. He recognizes the treasure in the field, and he gives it all up for it. And you can imagine the time Matthew wrote this thing, that the Jewish Christians of his time had to give up everything to buy the field or to get the pearl. The cost was astronomical. They had to give everything else up to have it, but they clung to it. Once they had it, they possessed it. And they were willing to even die for it. The age of the martyrs. First they gave up all the conventions of their life, especially their Jewish life, and the securities that came from being a Jew within the law, the Mosaic law. They had to go with the daringness of a crucified Christ. See? The daring, what it would take to be a Christian. They had to pay. By the time Matthew's writing this, remember, the martyrdom is everywhere. So not only did they give up all the conventions of their faith, the faith of their Jewish faith, the Hebraic faith, they are now embracing the Christian faith, Christ. And it was a high price to pay, and including they pay with their blood. See? And I think that's today too. I think in our own world today, the price of the pearl or the field is not only high, it will get higher and higher as time goes by, because we're getting more and more into an alienated world, a world that rejects Christianity. For somebody to believe today is going to require, I think, it's going to require the ability, it's going to require that you reject in many ways the conventions of this world and this life, the pseudo-wisdoms of this world. You're not going to be popular. You're not going to be comfortable. Leave it at that. Christianity is making more and more demands upon us, in the sense, as the world around us, as the Christian culture collapses, and it's collapsing, then to be a Christian will take the same courage as a Jewish Christian had to have when he took Christianity, accepted Christianity, and rejected his Judaism. Like St. Paul, the price is astronomical. And I really see that. It's happened in Europe for the last 300 years. There are parts of Europe that at one time were totally Christian, now are not Christian at all. It would be tough to be a Christian in some places, in some countries of the world that were formerly Christian. And if I read the tea leaves, right, if I'm reading the signs of our time, I think it's going to happen more and more here in America, in the United States, as we more and more secularize our culture, principally through media and education, and then by interpretations of the law. Okay, put it that way bluntly. Especially the privatization of faith and its elimination from the public sphere. Any expression of faith, any kind of faith, in Christianity, be anything. Okay, by completely secularizing the culture in the name of diversity, but in the end, our openness, in the end, it's closing. It's not that you hear multiple voices. Now you don't hear any voices except the secular voice of the state. You only get to hear one voice in the public sphere, and in the public education. When I was a boy, I went to public school. My mother taught in the public schools. We said Jewish prayers, Catholic prayers, Christian, etc. Now you can't say anything. Then ended 50 years ago, whatever it was. And you think, okay, it's to make, it's the idea of the separation of church and state. Yeah, but what happens? You end up universalizing the secular state, and that becomes a quasi-religion. In a sense, it's a set of values that are completely embraced legally and then culturally, socio-culturally, and it prevents the voice the voice of faith to be spoken in any public sphere. You can do it in church, but you can't do it in the public sphere. It's going to get more and more uncomfortable to be Christian, much more difficult to be Christian. 60 years ago, a friend of mine, was an atheistic friend of mine from England. He said, it was during the age when Kennedy was president, he says, fashionable to be Catholic. Well, good for you. Ain't true no more. It is not fashionable. You may be forced by our faith and are nurtured by our faith that'll set us up against maybe the culture of the world. The prevailing wisdom of the world, put it that way. The prevailing wisdom of the world. We have to say no to it. We have to say no to it. It's not going to make us popular. There's a price to be paid for discipleship. And I think that's exactly what was going on in Matthew's time, okay? But it is the treasure. It is the pearl of great price. Christ is the pearl of great price, but you have to see the pearl. You have to know a jewel when you're seeing it. You have to know the difference between a pearl of great price, a pearl, and a rock. The horror of time is to mistake the rock for the pearl. How's that for a crummy analogy? It's to think stupidity is wisdom. How about them apples? When I think of when I read some of the stuff in the paper these days that are some of the editorial, not the editorial as such, but some of the opinion paper things, I think, you can't be that stupid. I mean it. Not that I'm all that smart, but you can't be simplifying things as much as they do in the politicalization of morality the way it's done. You see it on the abortion issue, but you see it across the board. Where is there a faithful discussion at any level, whether it's motivated by a faith or any other virtue, which you're facing now, I see it facing so much today, is that you have to accept the secular world, the values of the secular world. You articulate anything on that, you'll either be ridiculed or be run out, you'll be silenced. You can't even have a faithful discussion anymore about almost anything. A real honest discussion. Can you really have it? We talk about the academic and the academic world of academic freedom. Yes and no. Is it really academically free as it should be? I'm not so sure about that. Political correctness reigns supreme, and it's a powerful corrective. To go up against political correctness is a risky proposition today, and it would require that if you are faithful to the gospel, faithful to Christ, the price for that, for the pearl of great price, may be, as it was in Matthew's time, a very, very high price you have to pay for it. But in the end, you get the field, and you get the pearl. The other, you get nothing. Boy, I think of the story of Europe. They sold out 200 years ago. Boy, I see the cities like Berlin and on fire, reduced to rubble. I think that's a testimony to the God they chose. They chose the gods of power, and they got what they paid for. If you want to see what happens when a Christian culture abandons its Christianity and assumes the logic of power, that's what it gives you. Power. And you see what happens? You see, the 20th century is testimony to the self-corruptibility of power. Who was more powerful than Hitler? He dies in a bunker with blown his brains out. And the cities of Europe, especially Germany, are on fire. Be careful of the gods you worship. The pearl of great price is very expensive, but it is a true pearl. Be careful you don't give away everything for rubbish, for a stone.